Welcome to Little Stories Around Us, a place where you can relax, listen, and learn English through calm and meaningful stories. Today, let's listen to the story of a man who started with nothing, failed many times, but changed the world forever. The story of Steve Jobs. Sometimes the world moves fast, and we forget how every dream begins. Great things do not always come from power or money. They often come from a curious heart, a brave mind, and the courage to keep trying. Steve Jobs' story reminds us that one small idea, if believed in, can light up the world. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. His life began with difficulty. His biological parents, Joanne and Abdul Fattah, were young and not ready to raise a child. They decided to give him up for adoption. A kind couple, Paul and Clara Jobs, adopted him and gave him a loving home. They were not rich, but they cared deeply for him. Paul was a mechanic and Clara was an accountant. From a very young age, Steve showed that he was different. While other kids played outside, Steve liked to ask questions. He wanted to know how things worked. He loved to open toys and take them apart to see what was inside. His father saw this curiosity and began to teach him how to build things. Together, they spent hours in their garage fixing radios, cars, and small machines. His father once told him, "If you build something, make it the best you can." That lesson stayed with Steve all his life. At school, Steve was very smart, but he was not easy to manage. He got bored quickly because classes were too simple for him. He played small pranks and often challenged teachers. But inside, he had a deep love for learning. Not the kind from books, but the kind that came from discovering new things. When he was 10, his family moved to Los Altos, California, the heart of Silicon Valley, where technology was growing fast. One day, Steve saw a computer for the first time. It was huge, almost the size of a room, but it amazed him. He thought, "This machine can solve problems. What else can it do?" That moment changed everything. As he grew older, Steve's curiosity became passion. In high school, he met another young man named Steve Wozniak. Wozniak, or Woz, was a quiet genius who loved electronics. The two Steves became close friends. They loved to experiment, build small devices, and dream about the future. One of their first inventions was called the Blue Box. It let people make long-distance phone calls for free. It was not legal, but it showed how creative and bold they were. Later, Steve said, "Without the Blue Box, there would be no Apple." It was the beginning of something big. After high school, Steve went to Reed College in Oregon. But after 6 months, he dropped out. He realized college was not giving him what he wanted. Still, he stayed around the campus, attending classes that interested him. One of them was calligraphy, the art of beautiful writing. It seemed useless at the time, but years later, when he designed computers, this class helped him create beautiful fonts. This part of his life taught him that no learning is ever wasted. In 1974, Steve went on a trip to India. He was young and searching for meaning. He wanted to understand life beyond success or money. In India, he learned about meditation, focus, and simplicity. These lessons helped him later to stay calm and think deeply, even in stressful times. When he came back to America, he was full of ideas and dreams. He wanted to create something that could change the world. At the age of 21, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started their first company in his parents' garage. They called it Apple. The name came from Steve's love for the fruit, simple, fresh, and friendly. They wanted their company to be the same, simple and human. Their first product was the Apple I computer. It wasn't perfect, but it worked. They built it with their own hands, piece by piece. It was the beginning of a new world of personal computers.
Steve's belief was simple. Technology should not be just for experts, it should be for everyone. With that dream, they created the Apple II, one of the first personal computers that was easy to use and had color graphics. It became a huge success and made Apple a multi-million-dollar company. Steve was only 23, but he was already a millionaire. However, money was not what drove him. What inspired him was the power to make something meaningful. He believed that design and technology should work together. A product should not only work well, but also look and feel beautiful. In the early 1980s, Steve had a vision for a new kind of computer. He wanted it to be friendly, fun, and creative. That dream became the Macintosh. It introduced things like the mouse and icons, ideas we now see everywhere. The launch of the Macintosh in 1984 was unforgettable. Steve made an advertisement called 1984, showing Apple as a company that would free people from boring technology. The world was amazed. But inside Apple, things were not so smooth. Many people found Steve difficult. He demanded perfection. If something wasn't perfect, he made his team start again. Some loved his passion, others found him too hard to work with. In 1985, the board of Apple decided to remove Steve from the company. He was heartbroken. Imagine being fired from your own creation. But Steve didn't give up. He later said, "Getting fired from Apple was the best thing that ever happened to me. It gave me freedom to start again." He built a new company called Next, focusing on powerful computers for schools and businesses. At the same time, he bought a small animation studio called Pixar. It wasn't successful at first, but Steve believed in it. He worked with artists and dreamers who wanted to make animated movies using computers. Years later, in 1995, Pixar released its first film, Toy Story. It became the world's first fully computer-animated movie and a big success. Pixar grew fast and became one of the most loved studios in the world. While Steve built Pixar and Next, Apple was struggling. Without him, the company was losing money and direction. By 1997, Apple was close to bankruptcy. Finally, they asked Steve to return. It was his chance to save the company he had created. When he came back, Apple was in chaos. Too many products, too little focus. Steve simplified everything. He cut unnecessary projects and told his team to focus on only a few products that truly mattered. His first big idea was the iMac, a colorful, simple, all-in-one computer. It became a success and brought Apple back to life. Steve also made a surprising move. He partnered with Microsoft, Apple's biggest rival, to keep the company alive. People were shocked, but Steve said, "We must do what helps us move forward." By the late 1990s, Steve's energy and vision had returned stronger than ever. He wanted Apple to create products that were simple, beautiful, and useful. In 2001, Apple released the iPod, a small music player that could hold 1,000 songs in your pocket. It was revolutionary. For the first time, music became personal and portable. Steve said, "With the iPod, you can carry your entire music library everywhere you go." The iPod changed the music industry forever. It wasn't just technology, it was emotion, freedom, joy, and creativity. Steve's next dream was even bigger. In 2007, he introduced the iPhone, a phone, camera, and computer in one. It was simple, elegant, and powerful. The iPhone changed how people lived, worked, and connected. Before the iPhone, phones were complicated. Steve wanted something easy to use, something that felt natural. He said the iPhone is not just a phone, it's a part of your life. The world loved it. The iPhone became more than a device, it became a companion, a symbol of innovation. A year later, Apple launched the App Store, where developers could create and sell apps. It opened a new world of possibilities. People could play games, learn, or connect with others easily. Millions of new ideas were born through this platform. Steve didn't just build products, he built an ecosystem where creativity could grow.
But while he was changing the world, Steve was also fighting for his life. In 2003, he was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. At first, he tried natural treatments. Later, he had surgery. Even during illness, he continued to work and lead Apple. His passion was unstoppable. He once said, "I want to put a dent in the universe." He lived by that idea every day. In 2010, he introduced the iPad, a device between a phone and a laptop. Many people doubted it at first, but Steve believed it would change the way people read, learn, and create. He was right. The iPad became another great success. As his health declined, Steve started to think more about life, family, and legacy. He was married to Laureen Powell Jobs, and they had 3 children, Reed, Erin, and Eve. He also had a daughter, Lisa, from a previous relationship. Steve was not always a perfect father, but he tried his best. He often told his kids, "Do what you love and don't settle for less." He enjoyed quiet evenings walking with Laureen, talking about life and ideas. Even in his final days, he kept thinking about the future of Apple. He wanted the company to continue creating with the same heart. In 2011, Steve introduced Siri, a smart voice assistant, his final gift to the world. It showed his dream of technology that feels human. Later that year, Steve knew his time was short. He wrote a letter to Apple's board saying he could no longer continue as CEO. He chose Tim Cook to take his place, trusting him to protect Apple's values. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away peacefully at the age of 56. The world mourned him deeply. Before his death, Steve had given a speech at Stanford University that became famous. He shared 3 lessons from his life. First, connecting the dots. You cannot see your future clearly, but when you look back, you'll understand how every moment connects. Second, love and loss. He spoke about being fired from Apple and said, "Sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith." And third, death. He reminded everyone, your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. These words inspired millions of people. Steve Jobs' story teaches us that success doesn't come from luck. It comes from believing in yourself, learning from failure, and following your passion. He showed that one person's dream can change the world. Today, every iPhone, every Mac, and every song played on an Apple device carries a piece of his vision. His story is not only about technology, but about the power of ideas, courage, and love for creation. He taught us to stay curious, stay brave, and keep going, even when the road is hard. As Steve once said, the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And he proved that true. If this story inspired you, please like, share, and subscribe to Little Stories Around Us, where you can learn English calmly through stories that touch your heart. See you in the next story, and take care of your dreams.